Let's hope so. Just a warning, I've not finished my coffee, so.
You are good to go, Lise.
Hi, everyone. Well, first sort of housekeeping thing. I live with my daughter and her son, who's not quite 2. So every once in a while I get burst-ins from a very cute little 2-year-old. So we'll get him on camera if he does, but just to let you know, sometimes you may hear noise in the background as well. So I think the nicest thing about just looking at you is there's lots of people I don't know, and that is so cool. So thanks for coming. Thanks for your interest. What my plan talking to Greg was just to give you a short intro as to how this group got started. Have some introductions, give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and say why you came, and then some sharing. So that's the total of our agenda. Though the one thing I will say is that I didn't conceive of it so much as a personal sharing meeting as more a gathering of peers who are sharing the principles or intending to share, teach, facilitate, whatever you like to call that. So if you're here for a reason other than that, you're absolutely welcome. I just want you to know what kind of how it happened a little bit more so that we can all participate in that reason for the gathering or comment on it, whatever occurs to you. So here's what I'll introduce myself, and then I think we can just go around and because there are a few of us, we'll probably want to be as economical with the time. So let me start with me. So I will give you 3 things, who I am, my focus in the principles, I guess where I live and why I'm here today. And maybe everyone can do the same. And does that sound good to everybody? Nobody has to unmute. If you go away, then we'll go head that direction. Okay. So I do not work in the principles in recovery. I am in a family affected now twice by someone who is a substance abuser. And so working in the principles in business, I have been heavily relying on my understanding to help me through that personal situation. I have the contrast now of knowing the principles and going through what I'm going through, and the first time round married to a heroin addict when I did not know the principles. So my focus is not recovery, has not been. I work in business, and that's really been it. Even though I trained at the Santa Clara County Division of Alcohol and Drug Services, it was always so that I could work in business. So when I found myself interested in starting a project here in San Diego, just from what's happening to me and wanting to contribute, I thought I just want to connect with other people who do this and whose main focus or part of their main focus in life is to work in recovery. Because A, I don't know it, and B, I don't know the folks, and C, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're up to. And I'm really big on, if I know what someone's up to and I can see someone or I'm talking to someone who needs that kind of assistance, I really like to be able to say, hey, you should talk to so-and-so. This is what they do. So when I reached out, that was really it. Like, refer me to people who are working and like to understand what's going on. And that really led to this, because people said, well, let's get together. So that's what we're doing. And the reason I'm here today is not to facilitate or create something that doesn't need to be done or, is for me. It's not. I'd love to get this out of the call. And the fact that you're all here means I've already got what I wanted, to meet people who are doing this work as their focus. So that is it for me. There have been other insights, intentions, potential objectives, ideas about what, if those of us who work in this field get together, we might create or do or talk about. And that's why I want to turn the floor over to you guys to just express that. So if you wouldn't mind saying your name, where you're from, your focus, if you have one in particular, with sharing the principles, and then why you came on the call. If that would be okay as a start, then let's go around the room. I'm going to turn over to Greg for the best way to go around the room, whether that's a raise of hands or he just calls on people. I don't know how you'd like to manage that, but
yeah, I can just call on people. That'll be good.
Okay, and I'm in San Diego, by the way, so I'm West Coast USA. And I'd love to know where people are, because then you kind of know whether you're saying good morning or good evening.
And part of the conversation that Elise and I had when we decided to have this webinar, part of what we were looking at was creating a network, and eventually we're talking about probably setting up a website just for people like us to connect. There could be somebody, for all I know, there could be somebody the next town over who's doing the same kind of work that I'm doing with the 3 principles, and I don't know them. I don't know they exist. So we're going to try to put together something where we can all connect and find each other. And if we're having a hard time with somebody we're working with, maybe we can connect with somebody else and, you know, kind of team up on the person, I guess, you know. But, you know, we could share what's working, share what's not working, and just build this thing together. Because I feel like there needs to be more cohesiveness within the addiction side of the 3 principles. It's just going to help more people, you know. So I'm Greg Suki. I started. I've been through addiction myself, and I've been through 12-step programs, and but it was coming across the 3 principles that really tied everything together for me. And that was, I think, coming up very close to 4 years ago almost. It's been a really fun journey, and I love working with people. Not only with addiction, but that is generally who I end up talking to. But we kind of end up dealing with everything. So it's a lot of it's very rewarding to me to see somebody change like that, from the first time that I talk to them and they're just, anxious and upset and just confused, and then to watch them kind of calm down and watch their lives start to come together. It's such a beautiful thing. So I was excited when Elise contacted me about figuring out a way to get everybody connected, and I don't know, I'm excited about this. I have, for those of you who don't know, I co-host with Harry Durbitsky. We do an Addiction and the 3 Principles webinar series. We've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. And we're actually going to pick up in a couple of weeks here, the first Sunday in September, with Amy Johnson coming on. And I'm looking at opening up a local 3 Principles resource center with meetings and like a bookstore and stuff like that. Hopefully by spring I'll have that opened up. And a little bit longer term goal is to actually open up an outpatient treatment center here in Akron, Ohio. So that's kind of what I'm up to. And I'm going to go through people just in the order I have them on the screen. I'm sure it's going to be a different order for everybody. So Tom, you are lucky number 1.
Okay, well, I'm originally from the Minneapolis area, but I live in Laughlin, Nevada now, so I'm on Pacific time. And struggled with addiction, or mainly alcoholism, for a lot of years, and was introduced to 3 principles in treatment up in Minnesota about 5 years ago, and it's only just now started to, within the last year, really take hold as far as continuous abstinence from alcohol. So I don't know what else you want to know. I'm here just because I love the 3 principles, and I share it a lot with people in my complex here, where there's a whole lot of addiction going on here. Nevada, of course. So. Occasionally I get through to some people, but anymore it's not quite as important to me I like to share them, but I realize I can't help somebody who isn't interested in help.
All right,
Thanks,
awesome.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for
Tom,
being
is there
here.
anything that you feel would be helpful to you personally if there was a group like this around? I mean, you don't have to answer that question, but
Well, yes, I've got tons of help from Greg Suki's group, the one that's going to start again here in the fall.
right.
I'm not. So I mean, kind of continuously for a long while, there's been some sort of a meeting I can go to with 3 principals, a couple different groups that have been going on. So yeah, I mean, since it's online, yeah, I thought about trying to start something here, and I just have often felt like I don't feel like I know it well enough yet. I mean, I always feel like my focus is getting clearer, but still not feeling like I'm a professional. Actually, I've had several times where I've had epic fails with people, and that's why I've decided, that's really not my place yet.
Yeah, that's all part of it, Tom. We, individually, we can't reach everybody. So it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong or they're doing something wrong. It's just not everybody's ready yet, not everybody's willing yet.
Thanks for sharing
So
that, Tom.
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. All right, next, my screen, I have Danielle. You are unmuted.
Okay. Good morning or afternoon, everybody. I'm Danielle Ganaw. I'm the clinical director of Gulf Breeze Recovery. I live in Gulf Breeze Recovery is located in the Panhandle of Florida. You may be familiar with Pensacola area. I've been the clinical director there a little over a year, and I've been with Gulf Breeze Recovery since their inception about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. I started as a counselor and then did some administrative things, and then moved to clinical director. We use solely the principles as a basis for the program. People stay with us about 8 weeks or so for addiction treatment. Personally, I'm really passionate about helping families. My own mother passed away about 4 years ago from addiction, so I helped start a family support group with Gulf Breeze Recovery, and I'm really passionate about helping our guests and the families kind of come together and grow together, and helping people see that addiction truly isn't personal. And I would love to be of assistance or training and education to those maybe who are starting out and want to learn more about addiction and helping others. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. Now, what capacity you say you want to be available? Are you talking about like free chats, or are you talking about paid training?
Maybe some of both.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. Next up, I have Tanya. And you are unmuted.
Hello. Hey, it's evening here in England, and this is my first webinar I've done in 4 months. And
welcome back.
I don't know if you noticed this, Greg, but this is my first webinar I've done where I'm not in my pajamas.
I do notice that.
Did you? Yeah, I'm going to party, and I'm going to be late to the party if I stay to the end of this, so I'm humming and hawing what to do. But I've just stuck on some nail varnish on my toes, and I'm all ready to go. But yeah, I'm training, and my interest is in mental health, addiction, and the prisons, where there's a large intersection in a way of all these issues. So I just wanted to get back in the conversation after 4 months. I've had my dog's been very ill. I know it sounds really silly when I say it, but yeah, I've been nursing an animal, and it has taken me a whole different direction for a few months. So I just want to sit in and listen.
You've been nursing another soul. That's a beautiful thing.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you again, Tanya.
Nice to meet you, Tanya. Do you work with anyone in the UK, or are you on your own with your work?
I'm currently being mentored by Elaine Halides, and
Oh, yes.
I'm also doing a mentorship with Jacqueline in the prison system, not necessarily with Jacqueline, but with the team up in the prison. But I've barely started with that before I ran my own dog over. I reversed onto her. So I've really been doing that for months, it seems. So I'm just starting out. I volunteer at the local hospice, and I've just volunteered this week. I've yet to meet them at a place that's local. I live in the middle of nowhere, so there isn't much going on right next to me that's easy to get to. But it's a mental health peer group, and I'll be speaking to the guy about that on Tuesday. And of course, when I speak, I'm coming from a 3 principles perspective. So we'll see how he takes to that.
Thanks. That's Jacqueline Hollows from Beyond Recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Tanya. Okay, next I have Scott. You are, I'm clicking it, it's not unmuting you. You might have to do it yourself. There you go.
Hi, my name is Scott Rebholz. I'm a retired kinesiotherapist that I worked for a number of years in a hospital. I've been around this approach for many years and have worked in various capacities. My goal has always been to get this out to as many people as possible, be a referral service, or direct people in to the right help that they might need. The person that they. Right now, I'm not teaching anyone. It seems like I run across people and I do a lot of informal teaching one-to-one. Funny how it works. I've also had to sit back and be a student again. I had to look at things in a little bit different way to see what role I want to take, in this 3 principles. My heart has always been in it. It's, I think, to me, it's the greatest discovery in the 20th century and in the 21st century for a number of different reasons. So I'm kind of here also as a student to listen to you all. And thank you for having me.
Where are you?
I live in Cape Coral, Florida.
Okay.
On the west coast of Florida. Yeah. But I did live in Miami for a number of years. We just moved a few years ago. If there's any questions.
It's awesome to have you, Scott, as always.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, next up I have Joe. And you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Bailey, and I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Scotty and I go back to the very beginning when I did my internship in Coral Gables, 1981, I think it was, that we started there. So it's good to see Scotty. So we're the old farts in the group. When I first met Sid, I was working in the addictions field. I worked at an institute in St. Paul, Minnesota called the Johnson Institute. And that was like a training area institute that trained people all over the world in the disease model. And my job was to work with the families at family therapy, and Virginia Satir was on our staff and some really incredible people. And I had worked in the field for about 10 years when I met Sid, and when I met him, I was pretty burned out at that point because I was discouraged by the results we were getting in the recovery field. But listening to Sid and starting to have the light bulbs go off in my own mind, the first thing I wanted to do was to take this into the addiction field. So for the last 38 years, that's been a big hunk of my work, has been working with treatment centers in the Twin Cities here, several treatment centers, training the staff. With Gulf Breeze Recovery, that's been a dream come true to work with Danielle and the whole staff at Gulf Breeze, because from the very beginning, the foundation was the three principles. And most treatment centers I've worked with have all been a mixed bag of cognitive behavioral, 12-step, and trying to help people come into a single paradigm of working from the three principles is kind of an uphill battle. But at Gulf Breeze, it was just like as easy as glass. It was very, very nice. So I'm very honored to be a part of the staff there as a consultant in staff development and organization, stuff. And hopefully Danielle and I are going to be doing some training here pretty soon. So my perspective, what I'm really passionate about at age 70, I just turned 70, is I want to train other people and pass this on to the next generation of trainers, and train trainers and train counselors. And I'll be working in Milwaukee this next year, training a lot of counselors who are in-home counselors who work in addiction and mental health, and training them in the three principles. And I also work a lot in healthcare with Mayo Clinic and other hospitals over the years. So my interests are broad, but my heart is in the addiction field, and I'll do anything I can to get this out. Maybe we'll do training over the internet like this. It seems to be the most convenient, inexpensive way to do training. But I'm just delighted to see all of you here, and that you're interested in, as I am, in taking the principles into the addiction world. And it's ironic to me, Greg is in Akron, Ohio, where the 12 steps started, and that we're able to rebirth the recovery process with the three principles in Akron, Ohio. That's very ironic to me. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, one other thing. I am working on a book called The Transformation Principle. I interviewed a lot of people in recovery who've recovered through the three principles, but some who haven't, but have had a transformational experience, because in whatever the modality of people working in this field, when someone has that light bulb go off, that spiritual awakening, that shift in consciousness, as we would call it in the three principles, that's kind of the heart of whatever really works to help someone in recovery, to cross over that threshold where they're free of the addiction and are able to begin to live life fully. So for me, the three principles has been the secret sauce for that to happen.
Thanks, Joe. And your other book, The Serenity Principle, was actually a big help to me when I was first getting started in the principles.
Yeah.
Because it kind of put into words what I'd been feeling about the 12-step programs for a while. So it was really great to kind of have that connection with you. And I ended up emailing you shortly afterward, and you actually responded, which was
oh, good.
Yeah, you responded, which was awesome. It was, but that was almost 4 years ago. That was my first three principles book that I read. And that got me really started in this work. And I actually, I ran an AA meeting based on the three principles for a couple of years ago.
Cool.
Here in Akron. The only reason I stopped running that meeting was because I spent most of my time justifying why it was an AA meeting. There were so many people that wanted to show up and shut it down because I didn't use the 12 steps. Even though in AA, the literature, and Bill Wilson especially, was really big on people doing different approaches, on trying stuff, what he called healthy experimentation. And I really have a strong feeling that Bill Wilson would have loved the three principles.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
But on that, thanks, Joe. And next we have Joel. And you are unmuted. Oh, you muted yourself. There we go.
Hit your trigger finger. Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Drasner. I'm just up the road from Elise in Los Angeles here. I've been around this understanding a little over 3 years, and recently I got a chance to work at a recovery ranch out in Malibu, leading a small group. The co-owner who runs the place, I had a nice conversation with her. She heard something in what I talked about and thought it would be a good experiment. But it turned out to be a little bit of a failure to launch in the narrow view, in the sense that I have a learning curve that I'm on in knowing how to enter the conversation with people who are in recovery. The other small group work that I've done is usually with people who are coming because they want to find out something about this understanding, or something in the title of a talk I was giving struck their interest. But here I was suddenly given a group and not even anybody there to introduce me to them. Just, okay, here's the group. Very nice group of 6, relatively younger people. But just on my own, I felt myself a little at sea knowing what questions to ask them to even elicit from them a place to start. So the good side is that the people who run the place want me to come in and maybe do a seminar for the staff. But should I get a chance to work with people who are actually struggling with recovery, I'd love to get some insight into, possible ways to just get the conversation started. Because I didn't know how to do that. And the feedback I got was the stuff I was sharing was just over their heads, and they needed something simpler, but I couldn't glean what they needed from the conversational gamuts they were offering.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks for sharing that, Joel. I really appreciate your honesty about that. I think we've all had those. Every one of us. Thanks.
And we'll get into more of a conversation after we do the intros here. So next I have Judy. You're unmuted.
Hi. I'm in New Zealand, and I've been around the principles, I guess, a little over 2 years. The main way that I share is just in people that I meet, and I do volunteer work for a thing called Warm Line, which is a telephone call-in service. So it's primarily geared towards people with mental illness, but also addiction as well. I'm relatively new to sharing, and also on a personal level, my brother is an alcoholic, so I'd like to be able to help him in some way that is fairly daunting. Yes, I'm just here to learn what I can, really.
Awesome. It's great to have you, Judy. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Emma. One of us remuted you. There you go. Now you're unmuted. You're good to go.
You're right. Hi, my name's Emma. I'm from the UK, down in Devon. I've been across this understanding about 3-4 years. I'm a hairdresser by trade, so I share within the salon, but I'm really interested in the addiction side of it, as I volunteer in a homeless shelter, and the guys and girls talk to me loads, and it seems to me they're sort of attracted to what I'm talking about. I could sort of recognise what Joel was saying, because obviously I do find it difficult to simplify stuff. So I just get so carried away with it because I'm so passionate about it, and they're just a bit like, oh, what's going just saying its thought in the moment. They get a bit sort of, I don't know, just think I don't want them thinking I'm disrespecting, what they're going through. That's probably where I'm coming from. So I was really interested in obviously this webinar, of just learning more and speaking to other people that work in, with addiction or have got addiction or anything like that. I'm currently working with a guy who Greg's met, who's 23, who's suffering or has been suffering with a cocaine addiction and weed. and he came on a 3-day retreat with me a couple of weeks ago and had a few massive insights, which was awesome. But he's gone a bit off the radar this weekend. So I don't know whether that's because he's having a great time partying, or, but you know, what will be will be. I know that he saw something, so that's the main thing, and felt something massive shift. So I keep trying to point him to that, really, the feeling, which Greg told me to go with, and that definitely worked for Danny. I've also got other people I know who have addiction, so that's really where I'm just keen to start sharing now. I'm ready now to start making it more of a business for me now, you know. Yeah, so that's where I am. So exciting and nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Great, nice to have you here, Emma.
Thank you.
Okay, next two people don't have video, so I'm not sure if they're going to be participating. Barbara, are you hanging out?
Can you hear me?
Quick unmute. Yep, you're good.
We got you.
I'm good. Okay. We're driving around the back roads of Maine, so I don't know what kind of coverage we're going to get here. My name is Barbara Smith, and I'm in Westport, Massachusetts, and I'm a clinical social worker, and I've been working in the field of addictions for about 30 plus years, and I am a relative newcomer to the principles world of 4 years, and I am pretty immersed in it at this point. I'm for a number of years, so I'm just so glad to be able to get a community of people together who can share their wisdom. Sometimes it feels like I'm the lone voice in the wilderness, and I'm sure everyone has that experience. As I've said to Joe, I've had several people of recovery go screaming out of my office, literally running out of my office, like, no, I can't, like I'm gonna kill them or something. So, you know, I think there is a part to it, and I'm very interested in sharing that and hearing more about people's experience with it. So that's where I am.
Very good. Also good to have you here, Barbara.
Thanks.
Okay. And last I have Kanduka. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Are you available? Okay. Now she had sent a message earlier saying that she was doing Saturday morning multitasking, listening as I can. So she's not here right now. So Elise, what would you like to continue with?
Yeah, maybe Kanduka, if you can hear this and you've heard the webinar, and I'll extend this afterwards too, is anybody who'd like to input can just input on the thread from the event or somewhere that Greg can point us to. So that if you've had an insight or a thought you'd like to share with people, just do it afterwards, or in chat while we're live. But I notice there's some things in chat, Greg, but I haven't been following. Is there anything we need to have a look at? Oh, for Tanya. Okay, fine.
Nope, it's just
okay. Well,
it's just Emma and Tanya.
It's always my well, I don't know if always, but it's often my experience that when people share, other people have insights. So I'd love to open the floor and see, you know, based on what you've heard, is there anything you'd like to add or share? And then I'll kind of summarize what I've heard from the group, and you can tell me if that is accurate or not. But anything occurred to you that you'd like to pop your hand up and share with others?
Joel had a question when he was introducing himself that I think it'd be great to hear from Danielle and Joe about. He was asking about how to start the conversation, kind of bridging that gap between having the understanding and being somebody who's obviously kind of on the opposite extreme, because people are caught up in addictive thinking or about as disconnected as you can get from what we talk about as an understanding of the three principles. So I'd love to hear from Danielle and Joe about that, since you both work more professionally with that.
Okay, and that's great too. I was kind of opening for any insight, but we can move straight into questions if you want. Anything anybody else want to share? Otherwise, we'll. Okay. I know listening to you that I felt very much what everyone said. That I've experienced all of what you've said. Wanting to learn, wanting to be better at what I do. So it was a joy to hear. It was a real joy to hear your thoughts and meet you all. So over to Joel. Danielle, are you accepting this mic pass? Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. So as I was listening, a couple things came up for me. One, you can't share what you don't know. So knowing that you're enough, knowing that what you have to offer can be helpful, and as best you can, trying to stay out of your head and stay in the feeling, because people respond to that feeling. And I think in the three principle community in general, we can have a tendency to focus on all the details of the principles, and what it can do if we're not careful is take us away from the feeling that we're really pointing at, the health and wellness. We have to be careful not to get people in their intellect. So you just want to create that space for a good feeling and for people to have their own insight when you come from that warm place. And when you share what you're passionate about, what you connect to, what you've seen, that comes across as a feeling to other people that they reciprocate. So don't feel a pressure to say what I say or say what Joe says. Say from your heart what you connect to and what feels true to you, and people respond to that. And take the pressure off yourself. I think we can have a tendency when we speak to kind of fill the space or fill the void, know that a little bit of quiet is okay. And when you really deep listen to others and to yourself, there's going to be a little bit of a natural pause. And that's to kind of give your body time to catch up, and that helps you respond from that place of wisdom instead of intellect. Is that helpful so far? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So just to give it maybe a little more specifics on what happened, because I was giving a shorthand version. This is a beautiful recovery ranch, and they're very attentive to all of the residents' needs. And and they all have to go to a certain amount of group hours per week with a couple of different facilitators. And after every one, or once a day or whatever, they get honest feedback from the participants of what happened, and they share that with whoever was leading the group. And while carrying out those 2 sessions that I got to do, especially the second one, we had a lot of what seemed to be a nice feeling in the room, and sometimes where we just dropped out of conversation and felt that quiet. And I even pointed out to them that this will occur as we continue to do this exploration. And one of the young gals who was in the program, who had come in a really kind of tight emotional place with a hood on her head and all kind of dark when she walked in, took it off midway, and she was smiling and in a nice place by the end. I really felt that second session with them particularly had gotten on track, even if the conversation specifics didn't bear that out. But the feedback that they got from them, that the content of what I was talking about was just over their heads, and they weren't getting it, and they needed something simpler, and they didn't have a lot of opportunity for a learning curve to let those things happen. So while yes, the feeling was in the room, and I noticed what looked to be some sort of settling in, and I thought a good seed planted for further whatever. I still felt like, well, gee, if I knew what sort of things to ask them about themselves, it might be helpful.
So one thing that Elsie said, and I just went to a recent training with her, she said sometimes insight comes before content. So, it sounds like you really had some positive responses. You saw people lowering their hoods or smiling or in their health. And so, in my experience in working with addiction, that can be uncomfortable with people because they're not used to it. They're used to either feeling numb or feeling low. And so, you only did a couple groups, and it's hard to put to words sometimes or to understand. And a lot of times I see where people, they really don't realize the effect of their insights until later, or they don't even realize that they're having insights. They'll go, oh, I've been here a month and I'm not getting anything. And you sit and you talk to them and they've gotten so much and they just don't see it as that.
Right.
The thing with the principles is it's so simple and it's so common sense. It's kind of like, yeah, I already know that. But then there's so much that we can see on a deeper level, and they begin to see it deeper, but they don't even realize it for a while. So it sounds like maybe you're being a little hard on yourself and they got a lot more than you feel like they did. And it just takes a little bit of time to see those results.
Right.
We're an 8-week program for a reason, because it takes people some time to be able to process and see. And especially with addiction, you've got the physical components where people don't physically feel well. Mentally, they don't feel well. The chemicals have affected their brain. So there's a lot going on there. And you want to be able to share and teach a class the best you can, from the best space you can, and then let go of the outcome and let go of the expectation and know, that you've planted a seed. We've seen people that have left our program, and then after 6 months, they call and go, oh my gosh, I got what you meant. I was on my way to an interview, and I was really anxious before I got to the interview, and I knew that my thought was creating this, So different people see things and get things at different times, and we all have our blind spots. Everybody has their own blind spots. So in one area, they may see it, and another, they may not.
Yeah, thanks so much, Danielle, and I really appreciate the encouragement, and I don't feel discouraged, and I thought the fact that they want to still talk to me about talking to the staff is a really good sign. I was just interested in possible different ways to talk to.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing with the principles is that the way Joe might talk about it, or I might talk about it, you've got to go from that place of wisdom. It's not a how-to, and so that's frustrating both for the practitioner and for the person trying to learn it, because we're so conditioned in that, well, first there's this, and then there's that, and then there's that. You're really trusting that mind is going to take care of that, and it's going to come through what it needs to. Every time I teach a class, I have an agenda and some things I plan to talk about. But quite often, I'll go in and I'll share a little bit that just comes to me, or people will ask questions, and it will just flow so naturally. And it's trusting that we have everything we need, and the information that we need will come to us for the people that we're in front of. And that takes a little bit of process to kind of begin to really trust yourself and trust the process when it's maybe not something we're used to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And this is exactly why we were trying to get this started, was so that we can share these ideas. This is beautiful. I love this. This is great. Did you have something to add, Joe?
Do I unmute there?
Yep, you're unmuted.
Well, I'm just kind of blown away by Danielle right now. That was just beautiful what you had to say. I just love how you talk about it. It's just very ordinary, and you hit all the high notes, that I would have talked about. But what really, Joel, for me, echo what Danielle said, to not have too high of an expectation for yourself, and, really getting this across in one session. That's why treatment is longer than, just a short conversation. It's not an elevator speech. It's, there's a lot of layers and depth to this. So you want to, for me, the most important thing in that first contact with people is not trying to get across the understanding at all. It's really just to build a relationship. First people have to feel cared for and listened to and loved. And once they have that trust and that rapport starts to build, then their ears open up. But until they feel safe, until they feel trusting of you and know that you're there for them, their door is closed. So, and even if it's wide open and they really like you, it's still, there's a lot of percolation. It's like, I love how you said that we're planting seeds, Danielle. Seeds don't come up like that. I remember when Scotty knows my son Ben, when Ben was little, we planted a garden and he had a row of carrots and, all these different things. And every time we'd go out to the garden to pick the weeds, he would pull them to see how big they'd gotten. and I would, try to tell him, Ben, it takes a long time. It won't be till the fall. Well, he didn't have any concept of time or fall or anything. And he would just, by the middle of the summer, all the carrots that he had planted were pulled up. I think as counselors, sometimes we look for results too soon. We want to, if we feel a little insecure about what we're doing, or do I even know what I'm talking about here? Then we try to look for validation from the results. But when you're speaking from that place of wisdom, as Danielle called it, or that not knowing, you don't really know what you're even saying most of the time. I have no clue what I'm talking about when I'm really speaking from wisdom. It just is flowing. It's just coming out of me, and I'm just speaking from that place. And I never know what's going to touch people or stimulate whatever it is that creates that insight, but we don't have any power over their having an insight. All we can do, as best as we can, is speak from that knowing, that not knowing, that wisdom in us that's really the universal mind, God mind, the universal consciousness. When we speak from there, to me, that's where the magic happens. That's where our personality and our knowledge or our expertise is transcended, and we're speaking from something that is more powerful than the personal Joe Bailey or Danielle or Joel or whoever we are. And that's where the power is. It's not in us personally, it's in us impersonally. So, but working with addiction, it's, I've worked in mental health, I've worked with relationship counseling, family therapy, coaching executives, lots of different people. Working with addiction is like the graduate level of working with people, because you with an addiction, depending on how far it's gone along, you're working with a chemical addiction, a wet brain, often a lot of thinking disorder, inability to listen, anxiety, depression. There's a lot going on with a person who's raw. And so we at Gulf Breeze, first attend to their physical needs, detoxification in a gentle way as possible, detoxification through sauna and other ways, to exercise, yoga, whatever, to help people get kind of back in their bodies again, and to start feeling again, because they've been so numbed out for so long, they don't even know what a feeling is. They don't know how to listen, so it takes a lot of patience, a lot of listening, and a lot of really what I think is the heart of my work with treatment centers is working with that invisible health that's in each person. And it's almost like as helpers, we have x-ray vision and we see beyond the behavior, beyond how they're presenting, to this essence of health that's in them that has never been damaged, can't be damaged, and it just needs love and understanding to bring it back out. And that's the miracles that we see in treatment centers and in counseling, is when you never know when it's going to happen. It's like popcorn kernels. You don't know what's going to pop first and what's going to come next, and when the whole batch couldn't be popped. But every person in their own time, you see it, they light up. It's like they're back. Oh my God, Sarah's back. She came alive. That's that awakening of the spirit, that awakening of consciousness. That is what is really the first toehold you get with people, foothold you get to, then they know what that feeling of well-being feels like. And once they've tasted that, the taste of alcohol or heroin is less inviting than the taste of the real deal, which is the real feeling that we are all imbued with. And that's what we hope for. It doesn't happen with everybody, right, Danielle? It doesn't. It often can happen a year later or 2 years later or the second or third treatment. You never know when as Sid would say, the penny is going to drop. But when it does, there is no doubt. You can see it. As a helper, you can see when someone has had that experience of their health. And that's the antidote to addiction. That's the cure. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be the cure the first time the person has a good feeling or an insight. Sometimes it's an accumulation of experiences of what it feels like to actually operate in the world from that healthy, resilient self, and see that that's a hell of a lot better than my best day of addiction. That my worst day of living in my health is better than my best day in addiction. And that's the flip that has to happen. So there's a lot to say about this, but that's just kind of do you have any more, Danielle, that you wanted to add to that?
Would you guys like to speak on, so you were kind of getting close to the topic of like setbacks and relapses, Joe. What would you say about that?
How we educate people in treatment is that we're all going to have relapses. I have relapses every day. I relapse. I re-enter my old thinking. My old habits come back. They're still all there. You can't, unless you get a lobotomy, you're still going to have your old thinking. So that's a relapse in a sense. And so you don't want to be afraid of relapse of old thinking, whether it's depression or anxiety or having an urge to use or actually using. You want to see it as a wake-up call, an alarm going off, a buzzer, some way to get your attention that there's thinking that you're having that is invisible to you. And that invisible thinking is what eats our lunch. It's what we trip over. And so every time you fall, it's an opportunity to get better at keeping your balance in this contact sport of life that is so unpredictable, so many curveballs, things that happen that it's not easy. It's a rough road, and you're going to get knocked down. But it's in getting knocked down that your skills improve, that you get more opportunity for insight and education. So we try to help people get over the idea that they're a failure if they relapse into old thinking, or if they're having a bad day or a low mood or thoughts of using again, or even planning to. It's that shame and guilt about that starts the downward spiral. But if you can educate people that that's completely normal, that you're going to have all the old shitty thinking you ever had before, it's just that it's your thinking, and it's coming from your mind, not from the outside world. It's not coming from the past. It's not coming from the unknown future. It's not coming from other people or events. It's coming from your thinking in the moment. And when you see that, it's just, it'll pass in a moment. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do anything about it. You just, oh, it's my thinking showing up. Wow, front page news. Joe has low mood, Joe takes something personally and gets caught up in his insecurities. And the more we share our own humanness as helpers, the more people are less afraid of their own experience and their own thoughts and their own feelings. As Sid famously once said, if people just were not afraid of their own experience, that alone would change the world. People could not be afraid of their own feelings, their own thoughts, and just know that it's just their thoughts that they're experiencing. You wouldn't have people murdering people. You wouldn't have people hurting people. You wouldn't have all of the negative behavior, because their common sense and wisdom would kick in more quickly and recognize that's a really stupid idea. I'm not going to do that. That doesn't feel right. So they have that wisdom and discernment. So that's what I'd say about it. And other people might have a comment. Greg might have a comment.
Anybody want to?
It brings a lot of compassion when you share your own story, when you share your own. I don't even want to call them shortcomings. I don't know what the word is for it, but just your own experience, because we all have that. We all have the ups and downs. It doesn't matter how great of an understanding you have of the principles. It doesn't stop life from happening. It just changes how you experience that. I can have the greatest understanding of gravity in the world and still fall. It's a principle. It just explains how things work. So, having a relapse is really no big deal to me. It's just part of it. And you just move on and you move forward. And, because here's the thing, and from how I see it, most people who get into addictive patterns, they do it because they feel some way they don't like to feel. And the majority of the time, that is that they feel that they don't belong. They feel alone. So if I come in and I'm sharing my own screw-ups, if you want to call them that, my own experiences, and I'm being human with them, suddenly they're not alone. Mm-hmm. That alone can have a huge impact on people. I mean, I've seen just that, just having a quick conversation with somebody and sharing, oh yeah, I do that too. And I kind of get that look like, really? But you're hosting this addiction webinar and you still occasionally go out and eat a whole chocolate cake? Well, yeah. Because that's an old pattern. And sometimes it's going to come back up again. Now, here's what's changed. Now I enjoy the cake. Because if I'm going to eat it anyway, why not enjoy it? Right? Whereas before, while I was eating the cake, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm such a piece of shit. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm horrible. I'm a terrible person. As every bite I'm putting in my mouth is adding more shame and guilt and remorse and all this stuff to it. And now it's like, that was a good cake. That's it. Move on. And what I found happens from that viewpoint, that attitude toward it, is that it doesn't happen that often anymore. Because I'm not adding all those negative feelings on top of something that is meaningless. It's a cake. If you're going to eat it, eat it. If you're not, don't. No big deal. Emma, did you want to pose your question? Oh, go for it, at least.
I just wanted to ask, are there folks who feel like they're going to leave in a few minutes? I'd love to. If not, if you're staying, I'd like to just let the discussion continue. But if you're leaving.
Yeah, I have to leave in a couple of minutes. And I just wanted to say, part of what I do, I work with a lot of heroin addicts in this area, and I'm sure other people do too. And I just tell people the problem with heroin addiction is just that your relapses can kill you. the rest of us, may get away with eating a chocolate cake without any really undue consequences other than a couple of extra pounds or a headache. But, when people understand that, I think, Greg, that was a very helpful comment. And again, the problem with heroin addiction or even with the major alcohol addiction is it can kill you. So I think that becomes part of the wisdom journey for people to understand that they do have wisdom inside of themselves that can help point them towards, as Joe was saying, a different kind of choice when they understand the source of their feelings. And the other thing I just wanted to say too before I got off is that the other thing I would love to see come out of this group is just the support of having sort of an energy field of people in this work who can come together and support each other, whether it be speaking at each other's programs or supporting one another. I think that's we're far flung around the globe, and I think it helps to have each other, to just be able to bounce things off of, to to sort of build the energy. Again, I feel in this part of the world, several of you are in Florida where it's caught hold, and it has not caught hold here. So again, to be a lone voice in the wilderness can get tiring at times, and it's helpful to know that there are other people out there who can join your voice, and whether there would ever be any kind of support in a more formal basis too would be something to consider.
Thanks, Barbara. Barbara, I was going to ask you about that before, and anyone else who's leaving to toss in. Appreciate that. I'm going to summarize the different things people have said, but I love giving people a lot of time and space to think about and respond to what's been in the room. Well, if you've got to dash off, it was great to have you. Hopefully next time on camera.
Hopefully so. Thank you so much.
Oh, and we're just, Barbara, we're probably going to do another one of these next month, probably the same, do like the second Saturday, same time. We might start doing these monthly if everybody wants to do that.
Sounds good.
We can keep connected and we can kind of develop some kind of community around this.
Yeah, I think the community is very helpful. That would be great, Greg.
Good. So let's plan on a month from today, the second Saturday in September.
Can we throw that to the group just to see? I'd love to do the first, but I'd like to hear what other people. First Saturday, not the second. Yeah, the second's not a great one for me. But we can. What's the best way to find out people's availability? Just toss that out in the.
Well, let's do a show of hands. Who does the first Saturday work for next month? Same time.
It's probably better for me. I know you can't see my hand.
Thanks for the info.
That's the majority.
Yeah. Weekends aren't always great, but because of grandkids. But I'll try my best.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you wrote. That would be Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, I'll be gone. Yeah.
Yeah, never mind.
Well, Tanya, she's in New Zealand, so no.
She'll be here.
Okay. No, Judy's in New Zealand. Tanya's in UK. You guys don't celebrate Labor Day.
That's what I mean.
No, but the second Saturday worked just as well. I was going to raise my hand for the second Saturday as well.
Okay.
Any Saturday. I have no life.
We saw your dog.
You have a very friendly dog.
Yeah.
This one, yeah.
There's a little love fest that happened a minute ago that was awesome.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. I got to go.
Bye, Barbara.
Anybody
Take care, Barbara.
Anybody else who's got to dash want to say goodbye or say something?
I do think also it'd be really good to encourage other people who are kind of on the front lines in the three principles who work in addiction to, invite them to join us.
Yeah.
this will kind of gradually grow, I think, if we do that. Like other people on the staff at Gulf Breeze, I sent it to a few people, but last minute, Danielle. But I'm sure a lot of the people on the staff might enjoy that.
So can you do the second Saturday, Elise?
I'll look. I mean, I'll look. In general, it's not great, but.
I mean, just next month. We can generally do the first Saturday.
Yeah, let's just do that for next month. Yeah.
Okay. So that'll give us more time to kind of, let people know ahead of time. But quite honestly, 15 people showing up for the first one was pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, I'm like Tanya. I'm anytime, any week, anywhere. Just let me know.
And the other reason we're doing weekends is because of people overseas, so we can get a decent time. So if we do it in the U.S. during the week, then we kind of have to do it after work hours. We're doing it in the evening here, and it's middle of the night for a lot of other people. So that's why we kind of picked a Saturday, so we could get everybody as much as possible.
Well, I'll say that I didn't, despite Greg's we were thinking about that. I didn't actually know if people wanted to be in the network and connect. I was very open to whatever, and sitting with you and being part of that conversation, Danielle, Joel, Joe. I know I do this in other contexts. I know how helpful it is to talk about professional challenges, things we've been through, share experiences, share questions. So I'm excited to feel that people like that feel that that's useful. And it sounds like just going for the next meeting is there anything else anybody wants to share about like agendas for those meetings or?
Well, Emma had actually had a question I think is kind of relevant to cover. Are you still around, Emma?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, hi. Hiya. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, hi. Yeah, the other day I had a meeting with a brain trauma specialist and a manager of a drug and alcohol unit. These are just friends of my son's school friends, like mums. We started talking in the playground, and they were quite interested. They'd heard of the 3 principles a few years back, and we were talking about doing something together, and they were really keen. But we had the meeting and a coffee and everything, and they literally bombarded me with all this stuff, about brain and how the brain, like a bit like what Barbara was just saying, that basically you can't just talk to someone who's got like in rehab or getting over an addiction, because they're on generally like heroin use, generally on methadone, so they're still on a substance, and they're still got like what Joe was just saying about the levels of thinking and the levels of other things going on, which I totally respect and understand. And I just felt in that moment I didn't really know what to say. I mean, I'm really curious and open to anything, but they were for starters, they said you've got no qualification in this. There is no qualification. It's just like a group of people just sharing, where they're very trained and qualified in what they do to deal with trauma and addiction. And I know I'm going to come across, obviously, people, who are qualified, and I don't want to disrespect that, but I'm finding that sort of a little bit sort of challenging. I mean, I didn't get bothered by it, and they actually want to see me again. I mean, I really thought I like cocked the meeting up, I came away quite, oh, for God's sake, well, I should have said this, I should have said that. But I found some quite interesting sort of YouTube, Bill Pettit does one really good one about the brain and the 3 principles. So I found that one and I shot that across to them, and they just they responded with, yeah, we'll have another meetup. So that's what sometimes I find people are quite challenging. Like when I start talking about stuff, they just say, well, it's not as simple as that. You haven't got no qualification. You can't start working in a rehab clinic or anywhere like that with that type of knowledge. But so that's where I really want some sort of guidance or insight in. Please.
I could comment on that, Emma. So, pardon me, the phone's ringing here. I've spoken to a lot of audiences, you know, whether it's at conferences or clinics or people who are way, way, way smarter than I am and way more credentialed than I am and much more experienced at certain things. And so if you try to meet them on the level that they're at and try to out-intellectualize them, you're screwed. you don't have a big enough gun at the gunfight, you know. But when you speak like you do, Emma, from the heart, you have so much life, you have so much positive energy. It's contagious. That's why they're coming back. That's heart candy. That's heart candy. And so you're just being yourself, Emma, and being honest. Yeah, I know nothing about the brain, but here's a video or whatever. You acknowledge the limitations of what you know, but because they're still interested, and same with Joel, that they've asked him back to speak to the whole staff, you know, the feeling that you show up in is way more powerful than your degrees or your intellectual knowledge. It doesn't hold the intellect doesn't hold a candle to wisdom. It has it's not even in the same ballpark. So you got the atomic bomb. You're the bomb, Emma. You're the bomb. So you to speak from that, and that with humility and honesty and acknowledgement of what you don't know, that's very disarming to people. But if you try to match wits with them, I remember speaking at Mayo Clinic to all the department heads once with Keith Levin, and we had to do a 4-day retreat with all these heads of research and psychiatry and neurology, and oh my God, these guys are all from Oxford and Harvard and blah blah blah, and it was a bit intimidating. And I realized, okay, there's no way I'm ever going to match these people if I try to talk to them from my brain and intellect. Forget about it. But if I speak from the heart, it was very effective. You know, people, because they'll test you, they'll challenge you, they'll do everything they can to knock you off your bearings. But if you're speaking from what you know and your own wisdom, which is what you know that you don't even know you know, then that helps you keep your bearings. And when you've got something way more powerful than the greatest intellect in the world. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a lot to learn about the brain and all these other things. They're all, you know, that's all helpful. And there's nothing wrong with all of that. You don't want to judge any of that, but you want to see that the real juice behind what you say is in that feeling that is just you, Emma, you know, and there ain't nobody in the world like Emma. And I could say that to each of you. You know, if you're just being yourself, comfortable in your own skin, that's the most powerful thing in the world. It's so rare. Everybody's trying to impress people, it's the ego, the world of the ego. And when you step out of your ego thinking and you just are yourself, it's disarming, it's connecting, it's powerful. That helpful?
Yeah, very helpful, Joe. And actually what you said did ring true, because when I first met them, it appeared to me that the conversation was very much about their mask, their ego. They were coming in with their mask on with, well, yeah, well, I've done this and I've done, and this is this. And they were trying, that's how I perceived it. They were like bombarding me, but I just remained in my space. I didn't get shirty or anything. I just remain quiet. And all I said to them when they were talking about the brain, I said, so what's powering the brain then? That's what comes to me. And they went, well, what do you mean? So I said, well, what's beyond that? What's powering the brain? What intelligence is running through us? And they went, well, it's the brain. It's the brain triggering all these things for these traumas. They're triggering it all. And I said, yeah, I agree. The brain does give you triggers and neuro pathways and all that. But where I was trying to get to, I was trying to point him to the bigger intelligence, like love, should we say, that what we're all talking about, that electricity that's powering it up. And as I walked off, we saw it all quietened down. And as we walked off, one of the drug and alcohol lady come up to me and she said, when you was talking about oneness and love and all that, well, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a practicing Buddhist. And she said, I could sort of get what you were saying there. So I think she sort of picked up on that, the intelligence and the oneness and the creative power. And she sort of understood that. She said, but to be fair, I've still got to meditate every day for at least 2 hours to get that space. And I was like, no, you haven't done it. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she said, well, I have to, because life's just too busy. I have to meditate. Without that meditation, I can't find that space. And I just said, well, you actually can, because it's not the meditation creating that. It's because, again, that's outside, isn't it? You're thinking the meditation is creating the feeling. And I left her with that. So I was quite surprised, actually, that she even wanted to see me again, because did feel very, but it could have been an opening door for me and people who might come on board with me, because obviously it's a local in Taunton in Devon, a local drug and alcohol unit, and it's quite large, it covers most of the southwest. So that would be a good opening door. So we just see what happens. But yeah, thank you, Joe. That really did help. Yeah. And I do always try and remain in that space and go with that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're more powerful than you think, Emma.
Yeah, it's just having that confidence again, but it's like,
right.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to say this was just absolutely wonderful. Just be able to connect with other people who are working in this area. Thanks everybody for showing up. So what'd you get out of this, Elise?
Well, we had 2 or 3 really rich, beautiful conversations, and it just reminds me of how lovely it is to participate in reflecting on the principles and how we share them, and the places where we struggle to share them sometimes, and how useful it is to be in connection, reflecting on the principles. And I'm just feeling that within myself. So I wasn't thinking of that when I put out this call, but now I feel really, I feel the promise of connecting more, talking more about these topics. One thing I do with a group of business professionals, and it's not often enough, is about every 3 months we have a call. And every time someone brings a client question, or, we all bring whatever we have going on and kind of drop it into the group. And then people reflect on it, but, it kind of organically happens that we all end up reflecting on the principles just around that topic. And we haven't had a meeting in a while, and it's just been a nice reminder of how rich personally it is. I'll leave today and continue thinking about the things we've just talked about. So I wrote down quite a few things that you all said about why we might want to network and listening and learning together, dipping ourselves in what do they call it? The sheep dip? The sheep dipping in the sheep dip of the principles. Doing some professional training together, sharing our professional experiences together, and our non-professional ones.
You know, this is one thing I'm taking from today is that we're all sharing the principles all the time in some way. And I think I've heard from the group that people feel there's something about the field of addiction that is useful to call to mind when you're thinking about the principles. I mean, I remember when I did a training, one of our great fails, when Gabriela Maldonado Montano and I were working and did a training in one of the big think tanks for business. And I didn't feel that it went very well at all. I mean, it was, I just knew afterwards they were going to pat us on the head and say, you two were lovely, very nice people, nice girls, nice ladies, but nothing was going to come of it. I just knew. And that bothered me because I didn't know how to create an impact where, it wouldn't just be, thanks very much. Because I could see that although that's helpful, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted to feel like people would say, we'd like a little more of that. We'd like to go further. And we weren't really, I felt we had a responsibility in that somehow, that we weren't creating that for our business clients. And this particular example was very stark for me. And so I called Ken Manning and he said, well, you step right into a place where there's an ideology. And I realized there were a lot of things that I wasn't taking into account, and that there were things to take into account and that could be useful, and that I didn't have to get wound up about them or off track about them or find a solution and go in like, okay, now we're going in this way. But it just reminded me today there are things it's useful to think about, distinctions it's useful to reflect on. Experiences it's useful to bring into a group and hear more about. So I feel moved and thrilled that anybody wants to get together to talk about this again, because I definitely feel like I'm going to learn and it's going to be helpful, and it has already been. So that's where I'm at.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd say this was a great first meeting for all of us. So does anybody have anything else before we go? All right. Well, thank you so much for showing up. Look forward to seeing everybody again next month on the second Saturday, same time. So it'd be great. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat later.
Awesome. So nice to meet you all. Really, really lovely.